Welcome to the March meeting of the Communications Council. And are there any announcements? First item on our agenda, there are no announcements. Report from Studio 21, George
Well, thank you very
Strimmel,
much.
General Manager.
It is that time of the year when, again, to all we send St. Patrick's Day greetings. And we certainly have had a lot of that reflected on Radnor Studio 21, including a great documentary we came up with out of Welsh television that went over and did an interview some years ago with the 9 survivors of the 1916 uprising in Dublin. And it really gave just a great documentary.
Is that going to be on?
It's been on.
It's been on.
That's right. It was on today, appropriately, and it will be on over the weekend.
What's it called, George?
I'm sorry, what's it called, do you know?
Curious Journey. And it was done by a Welsh actor, documentarian by the name of Kenneth Griffith. But it's entirely with people who, when it was shot, which was some years ago, were the last of the survivors of that uprising. And it, with vintage footage run in, made quite an impact. So it's the kind of things we do. Of course, we're also having lots of Irish music and what have you. And but that isn't the only thing we talk about and focus upon, despite the fact that this is a day of green for so many. Obviously not me, but anyway, so many. When St. George's Day or Steuben Day comes around, I'll make sure that there are programs that are appropriate to those groups too. Today, well, actually yesterday, marks the 3-month anniversary of the delivery and installation of the cameras that Comcast has basically provided for the operation of the studio, and they are doing very well indeed. In fact, we're doing now maybe upwards of 11, 12 programs a week using those cameras and using equipment that we had earlier provided, and we're looking to improve the operation of the station as much as we possibly can. They actually were installed on December 16th, so here we are 3 months later. Now, I would be remiss if I did not indicate that the agreement that the in-place agreement with Comcast calls for every 3 months a technical inspection and a report to you. That's now obviously the anniversary. Obviously, it can be any time between now and April Fool's Day or thereabouts, but that is now due. We have no problems to report. Everything is working fine from our viewpoint. It's just that that's what it is called for. I will tell you that we were having some problems. Comcast provides us with some boxes so that we can monitor our own signal as it comes down through the Comcast interconnect. And one of our boxes just simply died of old age. A quick call to Kate, and then she passed that on to corporate. And I might say I've never seen such reaction and support from Comcast. So I will give good credit where credit is due.
That's Kate. Way to go, Kate.
That's right. Well, she can tell her own story when she comes up. But the fact is that we were very pleased, and I thank them very, very much. As to Radnor Studio 21, we're moving into that time of politics. It's coming up on a primary, and then onto a general election that we have. As you know, the request was made before this group that the policy of the studio of restricting people on the ballot in Radnor Township be reduced to, taken from 15 minutes to a half hour. That was accomplished and is now in action, and people are coming in and are quite happy with it.
Good. Yeah, that's been controversial. That's good that you got that fixed.
And anything else?
Any questions for
anyone
Studio
has?
21?
Any suggestion? Well, we move
So
forward.
you've essentially set the installation of the cameras as a beginning date for the quarterly inspections, is that?
Well, it was accomplished the 16th of December, so
Yeah.
it would seem
Yeah, I
to
don't
me
thi-
that the 1st of April and thereabouts
I
would
don't-
be
I
a
don't-
sensible.
I don't think it's, unnecessarily to have them come out and conduct an on-site thing if you don't think it's required, but at least a conversation between you and they on a quarterly basis
I
solves the
can
problem.
report and
from
be
both
happy to
sides.
report to anybody they'd like me to report to.
I guess Broadhurst is the right guy to talk to. But anyway, it's up to you, George. It's your
My learned
operation.
friend who follows me could better speak to who I speak to.
George, you might note that you made a presentation to the Board of Commissioners on February 22nd, which was
Oh,
in
yes,
part on behalf of Radnor
That's
Studio
right.
21.
On behalf of Radnor Studio 21, and in another hat I happen to wear currently, that is as president of the Radnor Memorial Library, and another learned friend opposite, Mr. Wilson, representing the Senior Center, presented on behalf of at least the three of us a plan to relocate Radnor Studio 21, to relocate the Senior Center, and to relocate the library on the same plot of land that it now occupies, namely that plot of land that is occupied by the post office and the post office distribution center. The post office distribution center wants out. They don't want to be there. We don't want them there. Some 43 trucks, 3 semis, lots of people coming and going. They want to move the distribution center, not the retail center, which is the facility that was erected during the Roosevelt, that is the Franklin Roosevelt administration. And you can just look, it says James Farley there on the cornerstone. So it's about a 1930-something. And that would stay and be refurbished. Also, the War Memorial would stay where it is. The only thing would be that the post office moves basically over to where the parking lot is, and the parking lot moves basically where the post office is, and the Senior Center moves in and gains adequate space, and create what is called, our working title basically is Wayne Commons, a civic center for Wayne. That's the idea. What we're presenting basically is a philosophic statement. This is what ought to be. Now, we've gone to the government and asked for $19,500,000 in case to see if they happen to think it's what it ought to be also. But if no one dares, no one wins. And so we are daring, and we hope we win. Our chances, well, this time around, who knows? But we know where it ought to go and what ought to be done for the center of Wayne.
Well done, George.
And I might say there is unanimous support that from the board of the Senior Center, from the board of Radnor Studio 21, and from the commissioners who first heard this some weeks ago.
And the trustees of the library.
And the trustees of the library, those two, yes.
Does some of the stimulus program that might be available to fund this?
That's the $19,500,000.
So we're going under the stimulus program?
Yes. The
Okay.
plans for the library, at least in general, have already.
Is it shovel-ready, as they say?
Yes, we're,
George has his own shovel.
He
so
has
that's
his
not a
own
problem.
shovel. We
We're
want
not-
shovel-ready
We're
projects.
not digging graves.
Okay, any other questions for George?
But now we'll have a chance to mail the seniors to their relatives
Well,
when they
and
get
plus
too
the
old.
fact,
Is that it?
and plus the fact we're right in town. We've taken care of parking, some 50-some slots are suddenly freed up. We've tied into what's happening across the street, and we think it's a good job.
That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you very much, George. It's a noble effort, to say the least.
George,
Yes.
you talked about the studio cameras. How about field cameras, the ability to do programs off-site?
We purchased some years ago our own field cameras. The field cameras that came with the studio are no longer in function. So that portion was never really involved with Comcast. They did not replace that which was originally there.
You know, but originally, those cameras were from Comcast.
Yes,
The
yes, some
original
three of
field
them.
cameras were from Comcast.
Yes.
When they were replaced, they were not replaced by Comcast.
Neither was the switcher, neither was the playback units, neither, I could go on with a litany.
Right, okay. I just wanted to establish, though, we do have cameras, we can go out and do field,
Yes, but we're limited to really one good camera,
only one.
one good camera.
Okay, is that mostly used by the sports teams for,
Oh, and the library. And when we cover functions outside, any functions outside, that works. At one time, that was also working inside. We rigged it up so it could become a studio camera. But right now, that is used for any extra, wherever it is.
okay, so.
Primarily, it goes to those who want to do long-form sports
Okay.
coverage.
So we have one field camera, and if two people want to do do programs, different programs on the same evening,
They don't.
they don't. Thank you.
Any other questions for Radnor Studio 21? Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
My understanding is that Verizon has not coming tonight, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
That's unfortunate. I have a real bone to pick with them.
do you, is it a wishbone?
It's a wishbone. Maybe we can cut in.
You can comment on it, certainly. Kate? Kate is the representative from Comcast, and she's been a loyal supporter of ours for
12 years.
12 years, my goodness.
Well, 11 and a half. Well, to answer George's question about who to contact regarding the technical inspections, I think the best way would be for him to send an email to both myself and to Kevin Broadhurst. As you mentioned, Kevin's your guy. I'm your girl once a month. So if you just keep us informed, I think that's just the best way. Email's the best, and that way we'll both be on the same page.
Yeah, the reasoning is that, we sort of let it go prior to finally negotiating for 2 new cameras. And so going forward until this contract terminates, we'd like to get that to be a regular activity as provided in the Comcast agreement. So,
Okay.
okay, that's all there is to that. Go ahead.
Great. And other than that, I'd just like to report that there will be some channel changes. One is beyond our control. Fox Cable Networks is eliminating the Fox Reality channel, and they're going to replace it with the National Geographic Wild channel. In addition, we'll be adding ESPNU and Centric, which used to be known as BET Jazz Channel, and we'll be adding some of our Comcast Spotlight channels. One of those that I think is of most interest would be a Monster Jobs by Monster channel, so that people can actually look for jobs on demand. We've come a long way since classified ads. And Philly Park will be removed.
And all that's going to be communicated to the,
Everything's been communicated to the customers, and everything takes place later this month, the 29th and 31st.
okay, good.
Are there any other questions
Any
or
other
issues?
questions for Comcast?
I had one just as a consumer. I noticed the ads for Verizon talk about the number of HD channels, but as a Verizon subscriber, it seems that most of them have to be paid for in a premium channel. Do you have any data that you can show that how many HD regular channels like TNT and so on and so forth relative to Verizon? In New York, it seems that Optimum is sort of fighting back on Verizon as deceptive advertising, and I didn't know if Comcast had any plans there.
Well, some of our ads have reflected that in the past regarding their HD channels. We, as I mentioned last month, actually have sort of rebranded our Comcast Xfinity brand, our Comcast Xfinity Video. And again, it's not really a rebranding, but it's when a cable system meets a certain threshold. And with HD channels, that would be 5,000 plus HD choices, the best HD picture quality available. And I don't actually have a specific number of HD channels, but I can certainly take a look at that.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because they seem to be working on in New York, where I spend some time, some pointing out some of the deceptive practices on the part of Verizon, that they have more channels, but the channels that are free on Optimum cost you extra money on HD, and they manage not to mention that.
Well, I can certainly provide more information
That'd be
about
great
HD
at the
package.
next meeting, probably help your marketing.
I would be happy to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Under old business, how are we doing with the revision of the, never-ending revision of the code?
This is sort of Jarndyce versus Jarndyce at this point, but no, we, I believe, are done.
Out of the loop.
With our, well, we're slightly in the loop. I did receive an email from the township engineer, Mr. Malloy, last week, just inquiring as to some of the background in terms of the various dates on which we as the council considered the amendments to the code and also the public meetings that we attended. From everything I understand, the amendments are being put in form for presentation and publication in accordance with the requirements of the township code for consideration by the board. Now, no one's put a date on that as to when they will in fact be introduced and considered by the board, but I would expect that it will not be very long.
But the work is done, essentially.
As I sit here now, as I know what I know, yes.
You
the
hope,
work,
you
the
hope
work,
it's done.
The work is done.
John, you did
The dream lives on.
well, you did an extraordinary job, and I just can't say enough about the effort you put in and the time you put in. And I just hope that people in the township understand that this is a voluntary operation and that you're a professional and you give of your time and skill, and it's no small thing. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear.
New business, Steve, could you bring us up to date on the cell applications?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I was asked last month to get a follow-up on the existing applications for pole top and other cellular equipment that has been requested in the past. There were two of them, two from T-Mobile. They were pole top units, and a system from Extonets. They were going to install some pole top units down on Darby Paoli Road. I contacted both companies. Don Petros is a solicitor representing T-Mobile. Contacted him. He stated that over the last few weeks, they have discovered that PECO has put some limits on the height of the pole top units. So he doesn't know what the exact number is, but when he discussed it with his RF engineers, they felt that these units that they had proposed earlier would not fill the gap that they need. So basically, he is researching it more. He will get back to me with a definite answer whether or not T-Mobile is even going to pursue those two units anymore. As you remember, they got through our committee and got held up at the Board of Commissioners meeting. So they're not sure that whether they're going to pursue them or not. But he said that he would get back to me. As far as Extonets, I've contacted them twice. They have not responded back to me with a determination on whether or not they still wish to pursue their pole top units. But that was only two poles on Darby Paoli Road. Most of their stuff was located in Newtown Township. There are only two poles that extended over into Radnor Township, but they have not gotten back to me. With regards to Clear Communications, I reported last month that they were interested in locating on the Township's tower here at 301 Ivan Avenue. We've gone back and forth. They came out and did a tower study because they didn't want to submit anything formally until they knew that they could actually fit and function on that tower at the desired height. So they came out, we did a tower study, went back and forth. They feel that they could fit in at about the 132 to 135 foot level in between some existing carriers. They only require a small candelabra type structure with multiple antennas and one small microwave dish. They have a much smaller footprint than the cell carriers because Clear is only going to provide data communications. So what's happening now is they've done their tower study. It's back at their RF engineers. They're going to determine whether that 132 to 135 fits. If it does fit, then they will make formal application to the township via the proper procedure. And if the 132 to 135 does not fit, we do have some options to move some of the township antennas, one being the highway department channel, to an alternate location where they'll be able to fit. But we feel that they could fit in that 132 range where we won't have to move anything. So that's where we stand with Clear.
John?
Steve, I have a question. On Clear, is that proposed at this point to be the only location in the township? Because, I mean, can they get the coverage from one location that they need? My understanding.
Their first indication was yes. Their first indication, because they don't need, like I say, they don't need a large antenna array to populate the area they need to populate. So they said yes, that this would probably be the only one.
We've had some initial communications with Comcast. Bruce, would you like to bring us up to date on where we stand with our renegotiating the current franchise agreement?
Well, we've received from Comcast a suggested draft, and we have to establish a procedure in this committee for getting a negotiating committee to review that draft. I mean, the draft is available should be available to the entire committee, and then we need to establish a negotiating committee which needs to meet and undertake the negotiations with Comcast.
Yeah, just so the public understands that we're at the point where we're renegotiating or negotiating a new contract with Comcast that expires in June 11th, June of 11, is that correct?
June 8, 2011.
2011, correct, okay. So we will proceed with communicating with them, and I would assume we'll have the same committee we had last year, 10 years ago, whenever we did that last contract. Okay. Well, is there any new business, any public participation?
Yeah,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, you had a point.
Yeah,
of view on
as a member of the public, I just thought for the record I should point out the difficulty I've had with Verizon. A wire came down, I guess, overnight, and the good people at the township somehow found out about it and put up cones. And both of us tried to get a hold of Verizon to no avail. And I finally went on their site, and essentially if you weren't buying a new service or product and you had a problem, it was very hard, if not impossible, to find.
Whose wire was it?
Verizon's.
It was their wire.
It was their wire. And it's still connected to my house. It had cut off my next door neighbor's house completely. I finally went in as if I was buying a service, and then of course I got in right away, and then they sort of sent me through a maze and an email type of thing or instant message, for which they had a 19-minute wait. And it wasn't even that. I moved on, and around 5 o'clock I saw that someone had responded sometime in the middle of the afternoon. And there was a number there that I called, and finally got someone on the phone, and they said no, nothing had been put in, and they'd put me in for tomorrow or the next day. And the wire is laying on the road, and cars.
Is it a live electric wire?
It's not live, but it scares people. They see the wire there, and it's progressively, I know I'm about to lose my service because the insulation is being progressively worn off as cars go over it. And there's been no one out there from Verizon. They've been utterly indifferent. And they said, maybe we'll get somebody out there. Have a nice day. And I told them that I thought this behavior was just outrageous. And they said, well, they didn't say too bad. They said, we're sorry you feel that way. And I think it should be on the record that if this is the way they treat the public in this township, it's something we have to address.
Well, that's something you might take up with the Verizon representative that represents them to our council.
Exactly. That's why I was waiting for him to be here, and then, of course, he wasn't here tonight.
Well, you can get the contact information, I think, from Jim and make it a formal complaint to them. There's no
Okay.
reason not to do that.
You also ought to take a look at the customer service standards in the franchise agreement, which is on the website. My recollection is they're in Appendix C.
Uh-huh.
See whether there's a violation of those standards. I don't have the franchise agreement with me tonight, but my recollection is there's an entire appendix that deals with customer service.
I assume it would be a violation. I couldn't imagine that we would write in that they could be so
No,
indifferent.
but I think what's important is.
I know
for them
what
to
you mean.
understand-
I'm just
It's
seeing a little
important, I
humor in
think,
it.
for them to understand that we take the agreements that we make with them seriously.
That's right.
And that we cite those agreements as they're having been violated. And that has more impact than one unhappy customer, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Good point.
Back in the days when we had only one provider, we used to get information every month on the service part of their operations, the amount of calls, the type of calls, their response time, and so on. So we monitored that much more closely. We got away from that because there was a question, at least as to part of the information that we were provided with, as to whether or not it would violate some confidentiality and some questions of competition. I think we ought to readdress at some point in time this whole question of the service sector of their performance for both companies, as that is certainly something that's, I don't believe is within that kind of competition area that we were trying to avoid.
Okay, we should definitely look into that, and why don't we do that as part of the charge to the committee that's going to renegotiate with Comcast?
Okay.
Very
All right.
good. Good idea.
Are there any other comments, questions, issues? Could I tell a quick Irish story? It's true of all the stories that I tell. A friend of mine was over in Ireland, and he was a bit lost, so he stopped and he asked an Irishman, he says, "What's the fastest way to Dublin?" So the Irishman said to him, he says, "Now tell me, would you be walking or would you be driving?" So the American says, "Of course I'm going to be driving." So the Irishman says, "That's the fastest way." Thank you very much, and good night.